Wow, does this show keep getting better and better or what? Like this is I think a sort of rebirth for the Game of Thrones. And I think it really does justice to what George Martin is trying to depict in his lore and storytelling style and the shock factor and everything that I think the were the good elements of the first season of Game of Thrones, I think are starting to show in the House of the Dragon. So far, the only real issue that I've noticed is that the episodes are a lot slower to pick up compared to the initial first season. If you guys remember the first episode, the kid gets pushed off the tower when the Lannisters are banging brother to sister, and then Eddard Stark loses his head because obviously he's played by Sean Bean, so why else would he survive, right? And yeah, the hits keep rolling all the way to the Red Wedding, where shit hits the fan and things get you know harsher and darker. And I expect nothing less of this series. The only thing is that the first two episodes I felt was a little bit slow, stretched out, a lot of building, story building, character building, world building, which are nice elements, but it sort of reduced certain shock factors. Other than the birth of the baby, which I think, yeah, it was a pretty graphic scene, but it wasn't really shocking because you're not too invested in the character to fully understand what's happening. But what was unique about the first episode of the original Game of Thrones is that even if you don't know much about a kid, pushing a kid out of the window is already shocking because even if you're not truly invested in the character, it's still a kid. Like you wouldn't want a kid to just fall off a window, being pushed off, by someone and dying. So very interesting now that I think about it, the way that first episode was crafted, and I think it was very, very, it's really brilliant, right? It's genius. So coming to this season, the first two episodes, yes, was a little bit of draggy, but things built up after the third episode, the battle against the crab feeder. I did feel though that the um the crab feeder battle was a little bit overdone, and I feel that it seems really unrealistic all of a sudden in the Game of Thrones for Daemon Targaryen to just charge into the crab feeder's island and just take on all of the soldiers while having arrows miss him left and right, surviving explosions, dragon fire, all sorts of things, and return completely unscathed. I feel like he should have at least had a very notable injury. And I think even the wound that he did have seemed to not really amount to much, and he recovered far too easily. Like compared to his brother Viserys, who's just getting cuts off like sitting in his own chair, and he's like already in dying state. His fingers are already like falling off and stuff. I think this guy really gets off like to be quite invincible. Like Daemon is just really invincible. The way they depict him in the third episode. It's like compared to him, his brother Viserys, despite being the king, and his older brother and whatever, it just seems so vulnerable, just sitting on the chair and getting cuts and dying. While this guy is like being like rushing into a battlefield, taking on hundreds of people, enemies and whatever, and survives. And of course, the troops come to help him, but yeah, it just seems a little bit. Um, I don't know, quite unrealistic, I must say, compared to the way the rest of the season is being taken. And then we hop to episode 4, where I think was one of the most interesting episodes that I've seen so far, which is really what I think brings out the strength of the Game of Thrones, which is where Daemon is the one truly playing the Game of Thrones at this point, where he takes Viserys to this brothel. I mean, he takes Rhaenyra, sorry, to this brothel. Takes Viserys to brothel. That is something else. He takes Rhaenyra to this brothel and tries to ignite the sort of this feeling of like sort of help her realize her sexuality and understand who she is as an individual, and the fact that she should have the freedom to express her sexuality to whoever she wishes to. And he's forced to control himself. I think he sort of gives in a little too much, almost allowing Rhaenyra to take charge of the kissing scene that they were having. And he realizes he's taking a step too far. He doesn't need to go that far, and so he leaves her. And on his way out, he takes off her sort of her cloak, which is disguising her from people identifying her as the princess. And so by removing that cloak and walking away, I think it's obvious that Daemon has set up Rhaenyra to be identified by spies of the Kingsguard. And so he expects there to be some sort of a disagreement, I believe, between Rhaenyra and the king. And I think ultimately it works in Daemon's favor because Daemon does manage to dismiss Otto Hightower, who was the hand of the king. So by getting rid of Otto Hightower, Daemon Targaryen is now a sort of, I would say, has taken a very important character out of the scene, who a person who could have protected the king should Daemon scheme something else. But now it seems like without Otto Hightower, the king is very, very vulnerable, and he seems even more vulnerable than he was before. And of course, the Daemon does get someone new to take his place. He gets a new hand of the king. The other guy who was apparently advising Viserys. He seems to be a nice, strong. Yeah, Lionel Strong. He seems to be a pretty trustworthy character so far. But if anything we've learned from the Game of Thrones is don't trust anyone, and don't invest in any character too much because they're all gonna die. But regardless, those of you who may be fans of the books probably already know who's going to live towards the very end. I, however, am uh, not someone who has read the books. I've only watched the TV series. However, I did dig up some Targaryen lore when I was watching the initial Game of Thrones, very early on. I think it was season 2 or 3, where I was curious about the family tree of all of the Targaryens because there was just so many names they were calling out. And I was like, who are all these people that they keep talking about that I can't remember? So I pulled out the family tree, and I think as a result, I sort of know who are the Targaryens that are going to be left at the end of this season. So a bit unfortunate that I had to have that spoiler for myself, but I don't really know about any of the other characters, and so I'm pretty interested to know what happens with them. So Lionel Strong does take over as the Hand of the King from Otto Hightower's position and continues to sort of be a good advisor for the most part. So Daemon is unfortunately expelled or sort of told to return to his respective kingdom to be with his bronze bitch, or so he says. And yeah, the We Light the Way is an even more exciting episode, and I think as you can see, the rating really picks up. And yeah, it's probably the best episode so far, and it's not only a great episode in the sense where it ties a lot of loose ends, it also sets up for the next episode, which I think is even going to be even more exciting, considering how they've been taking this so far. So, from what we have seen in this last episode, for those of you who have not watched it, please watch it first. But those of you who have watched it, the spoiler version basically is that it's very interesting how Damon, visits his wife, and the horse is sort of I would say a horse feels some kind of fear in the presence of Damon, and we're not sure whether it's because of the smell Damon carries. Having ridden on Dragonback, it generally has this sort of intimidating presence that, if you're a horse that's not Damon's horse, specifically, you may be alarmed by the smell of the dragon that Damon is carrying, and perhaps some kind of also ill intent that he may be having, that the horse could be sort of sensing it in a sixth sense form of way. I know people say animals don't have sixth sense, but yet when there's like some kind of earthquake or a tsunami or whatever calamity, the animals are the first to react. The human beings are like, what was it in the news? Did you guys get a text? But the animals already know. So I feel like, yeah, the animal probably has some kind of sixth sense to understand that Damon did have some kind of ill intent and was freaked out. And when the bronze bitch sort of pulls out her bow and arrow to try to snipe him, I think the horse gets even more alarmed, realizing the situation it's in, and raises its legs. And I think as Damon rushes to pull the horse down, probably he was in the right place to just knock it over, and the horse, falls on the bronze bitch, and she gets paralyzed. Damon, I think, please, I think it's quite obvious that he finishes her off. Even though they cut the scene later on, we find out that she is dead, and so he leaves the place. And yeah, we have this whole marriage ceremony that is being arranged between Rhaenyra and this gay prince of the Valarians. And yeah, I mean, his his gay buddy gets killed by what's his name? Sir Kristen Cole, right? I think it was a very bad idea because yeah, his gay friend actually went and like sort of how can you put this? Um, he insinuated in some way to Kristen Cole that, knowing the secret that they both now share, which is, he's the gay friend of the prince, and Kristen Cole is going to be the actual lover of the princess. That secret, I think, was a bit scary to be carried, and I think Kristen Cole, knowing that this guy knows it, is probably in fear that more and more people are going to know all these things. And you really feel bad for Kristen Cole, but at the same time, you understand that this guy is undergoing a serious shock in his life. He's a royal warrior, a very good warrior, the only person to have dehorsed the other two Baratheon brothers, and even Daemon himself. So Kristen Cole is an excellent fighter, and for him to be put in a position where he's being questioned of his his loyalness, and also the fact that he knows he has broken his vow by sleeping with Rhaenyra. I think, yeah, the guy's going through a tough time, and so he sort of blurts it out um, to the queen. And wait, what's the queen's name again? Alice, yeah, Alicent, yeah, blurts it out to Alicent Hightower that he did in fact sleep with Rhaenyra, and Alicent actually finds out the secret that she didn't know. She thought that he was actually sleeping. I mean, Rhaenyra was with Daemon, so that kind of messes things up. But I think it's getting more and more interesting. But to the very end, a fight breaks out in the during the banquet, and that scene was so incredibly crafted. The cinematography, the what do you call this? Basically the cinematography, the screenplay in that scene of how you can see Damon sitting in that corner, observing everyone in the hallway, and everyone sitting down in the respective tables are all observing each other, trying to get a notion of which houses are weaker, which houses are doing well, trying to listen to the whispers and the stories that are being told around, getting the rumors passed around. This is how their Facebook used to work back in the day, right? This is their social media. They chit chat, they sit down, they talk to each other, they whisper, they bitch about other people. They talk behind other people's backs. Sometimes they talk in front of them. And one good person who I realized was very interestingly honest is the Lannister guy, right? Yeah, he's like brutally honest. He's like, Allison was apparently late for the party, and he's like, this is why women, don't go to war because they're always late they're always late. So, and then the king and Rhaenyra throw this very disgusted look, but yeah, I always find him like like the most, how can I put it, honest guy, right? He just goes to people, he tells how he feels, you like it or don't, take it as it is, and he doesn't have any ill intent in some way, but you'll never really know because these kinds of people are the most difficult to read because they always use humor to sort of cover their actual expression and emotions. Damon, on the other hand, doesn't really use humor very well. You can see that his anger or his frustration still shows in his face. And that's a very interesting thing to note how they all trying to read each other, trying to read each other's faces, their gestures, their body language, and all of that. And yet they're also trying to hide themselves at the same time from reacting to how things are going. And all of a sudden, the fight breaks out. Kristen Cole is pounding this gay guy's face in. Um, in the end, Rhaenyra is married to the Velaryon prince in a very bloody event. And yeah, I guess now they're calling it the Green Wedding, I believe, because Alicent Hightower actually walks in her green attire, which is the Hightower's war attire or something. Yeah, I mean, kind of disobeying the king and sort of disrespecting the king in many ways because she should be wearing her actual house clothes, which are the Targaryen clothes, but instead she's wearing the Hightower clothes. So very interesting. A lot of politics, a lot of things going on around. And I think Viserys would have reacted to everything, all this nonsense, if Viserys was in his full strength. But he was clearly very weak and very tired. I just wanted the wedding to get over with. And as we saw at the end of the wedding, he just passes out. And I believe it's a high chance Viserys may not live through the next episode. So very, very interesting. Once again, I don't really know the entire story. So if you guys are here from reading the book, you guys probably know a lot more information that I don't. What I would like to hope is for you guys not to share that information with anyone in the comments, especially those who have not read the book, and let the series take its course. And as for those of you who have not read the book and you want to get the opinion of someone who has not read the book, then I'm probably the right person for you. But if you do want to get the opinion of someone who's read the book, there's so many other greater channels out there that actually would be able to give you even more in-depth information. Although I prefer to stay away from that information because I want to take this series as is, because I do understand that they've deviated a bunch of things from the book, and it would feel weird to have a series that's different from the book, and you may agree or disagree to certain things. It's a very different feeling when you have that disagreement with the way things are not the same from what you've read or what you've known before. And that's what I really felt when I used to read the Harry Potter books and watch the movies. I didn't really enjoy the movies as much because I read the books and they were different, and a lot of things were not depicted as well in the movies. But at the same time, for those people who just watched the movies, they really enjoyed it. And so I think I could take that approach in these Game of Thrones, and perhaps um, even with this House of the Dragon, which I think is called Blood and Fire or something. And perhaps after this entire season or two, then I'll probably maybe visit the books, or even I heard there's even some graphic novels. But yeah, it's getting really interesting, and I think House of the Dragon is hands down going to probably be the best TV series this year. If it keeps going at the right pace, and it's like picking up, right? If it keeps picking up, like if this is not the peak, and it keeps picking up to peak at episode 10, I think it's going to be absolutely incredible of a TV series. Considering all the competition it has had this year, if I'm not mistaken, Arcane started early this year, right? No, Arcane was last year. Okay, that's good for them because Arcane was just so good. So Arcane was last year. That's pretty good. But I believe there's also something new that I've recently started, Cyberpunk. I haven't really gone too much into it, but I do want to watch this. Um, there was also another one, The Boys, right? The Boys was another thing, but The Boys was underwhelming this time. So I think House of the Dragon stands to be the best TV series this year. And yeah, that's about it. I think that's a good way to recap what I've seen so far. I would want to give the full in-depth spoiler review at the end of the season. I don't really wish to give a episode by episode breakdown unless something extraordinary happens. And so that'll probably be it for now. But at the same time, I would like to give a report that I'm still yet to watch the new Lord of the Rings series, which is the Rings of Power. I'm not sure if I will be really getting into it so soon. I have not got a chance to subscribe to watch the Rings of Power, and also I've been hearing really bad things about it. So yeah, I'm gonna stay away from this one until I'm done with the House of the Dragon, and then probably when I'm interested again, I'll watch this. Regardless, I do feel like I want to rewatch The Hobbit pretty soon because I just completed rewatching the original Lord of the Rings saga because I heard about the Rings of Power coming out, and so I started. But man, it's like 4 hours per uncut version, right? It's like 4 hours per film. So yeah, it's like almost 12 hours to watch the entire thing. And I just completed the Return of the King, which is yeah one of the greatest films ever made, hands down. I always felt that it's just so complete and so interesting, so many stories going on. It's so well done that yeah, for me it's a 10. I don't care if there's anyone who thinks they want to rate this anything less than a 10. But for me, The Lord of the Rings: Return of the King is one of the greatest films ever made. And so yeah, I just finished watching this, and man, it is exactly what it still is. It's so great to watch after so many years. Almost 10 years. 20 years, sorry. Almost 20 years. And this still stands to be one of the greatest movies. Even today, the CGI looks impressive. So yeah, but I do plan to rewatch the entire Hobbit, probably before I even get to the Rings of Power. So might be a good decision. I'm not sure. I do like the Hobbit. I know some people don't really like it, but it is what it is for me. I enjoyed it. So anyway, House of the Dragon is doing well. Good to know. All the Game of Thrones fans, I'm gonna put my Valar Morghulis shirt back on proudly now, especially considering the mayhem that took place in the last two seasons of the original series. I think this will be a great way to sort of redeem themselves and bring us back to the lore and the world um, that is so well built by Tolkien. Oh, sorry, not Tolkien, by George R. R. Martin. Yeah, I'm really bouncing between Tolkien and Martin right now, so do bear with me. It's J.R.R. Tolkien and George R.R. Martin. But yeah, it's two amazing authors for sure, two brilliant minds. And so glad to have lived during this time. So yeah, that's it from me. See you guys in the next one. Take care.